Please give this man a warm, warm welcome. Round of applause, Mr. Norm Clark. So many awards. Well done, sir.
I should have brought them all tonight.
I know, just, across the coffee table. All right, folks, here we go. Please help me welcome our special guest, our very special guest. He's the frontman for his own hit reality TV show, Pawn Stars. But if, of course, you live in Las Vegas, you know it's the Golden Smith Pawn Shop, located here around North Las Vegas, really close to the Stratosphere, I believe. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rick Harrison.
Well, thank you everyone for coming out tonight. This is always a special occasion when we get to sit down with newsmakers and entertainers and such from our great city. We've been trying to get Rick for a long time, and we finally pried him loose. He's up to, I believe, 450 plus episodes. 12. Are you shooting your 13th now?
Shooting my 12th season right now. As of December 18th, we'll have filmed 460 episodes.
Incredible. Well, our guest tonight was born in Lexington, North Carolina, March 22nd, I got this wrong the last time, they booed me, 1965, to Joanne...
29.
29?
Yeah, that makes me 29.
I got 29. Your parents, Joanne and Richard Harrison. 2 years later, the Harrisons moved to San Diego, where Rick's dad would serve in the Navy. In your book, Licensed to Pawn, you describe your dad as a man who figured out at a very early age how to survive. He drove, he was driving a school bus, in fact, at what age?
At 14. Well, this was the hills of North Carolina. And the way this is how what kids today, the way we raise kids. Back then, at 14, if you showed you're responsible, you could be responsible. So, my father's school district, what they did, when you were 14, that meant you were old enough to drive a school bus, if you had a place on the side of your house to keep it. So, this is the way they did it back then. He would wake up in the morning, go out to the side of the house, pick up the school bus, pick up all the kids, bring them to school. They had a total of 3 school buses at his school. And during the day, the janitor would maintain the school buses, change the oil, fill them up with gas, and then after school, he would drop everybody off and park the bus on the side of his house, and he got $5 a week for doing it. Hey, you can think about it. You're cheap labor. I know, but that's just the way it was back then. I remember my dad also didn't get a TV until he was 16. My parents did, so grandparents.
He joined the Navy.
Well, he's...
Oh, that's right.
He was coerced into joining the Navy. My dad, in 1958, him and 2 of his friends borrowed a truck from somebody without asking to borrow the truck. And they went in front of the judge, and the judge said, "Well, boys, do you want to go to prison, or you want to join our fabulous military?" And they all said, "We all join the military." And this is the way it was in 1958. It was, went to the recruiter when he got at like 10 o'clock in the morning. He said, "You're 17, you got to bring your father." So he comes back at noon with my grandpa. And then he got back there at 3 o'clock and got on a bus. He was gone. That's how fast you joined the military back then. But today I really believe they should do that today. You got all these kids now, they do something stupid and they have a record for the rest of their life. Because that could have screwed my dad up for the rest of his life. But my dad ended up turning to, instead of a burden on society, over the next 50-some years, paying a ridiculous amount of taxes. And, it was an asset to society. I think that's one of the things we got to do with kids today.
Well, he developed some interesting entrepreneurial skills in the Navy.
My dad was a personnel man, And a large part of the time he was in the Navy, he was on a fleet tug, which is bigger than the tugboat you see on the movies. It was over 200 people on it. It was like, I think right at 80 people on board. And but he was the personnel man, which on a small ship like that, you did a lot of different things. And he was also the paymaster. So when you're in Vietnam, you actually got paid with what was called military script. It looked like money, but it wasn't. It's printed by the U.S. Bureau of Printing and Engraving. It said had dollar amounts on it, but it was actually dollars. But so he became a little. There was a little bit of loan sharking going on. Well, it was so easy for him to get paid back. You know, it was like, here's $5. It's $6 on payday, and so he count out the money and then take his money back. He did that in the Navy. He had a really interesting career in the Navy for a few years on this fleet tug. His captain was a survivor of the Bataan Death March, which meant he was a god in the Navy. He was untouchable, and he was a little bit batshit crazy. So his best story, which I have checked out with multiple people on his ship, is I think it was like 1969. They're in Vietnam. They're pulling into a harbor, and the captain doesn't want to wait for a pilot to bring him in. Back then, the original term for a pilot was actually someone who would guide you through a harbor so you could get to the dock without running up on a sandbar. But the captain didn't want to wait because he wanted to go in the harbor and get some beer so he could get drunk. So he ran the ship on a sandbar, then took a landing craft to onshore, came back a few hours later, had like 100 steaks, like 50 cases of beer, and 75 law rockets. So when the tide came in and took the ship off, they went out in the ocean the next day and had a barbecue and got drunk, and he let everyone on the ship have a law rocket to shoot at seagulls. That was the weirdest, but that was some of the crazy stuff I did in the Navy. And like I said, I actually checked these stories out. They're real.
So when you get to San Diego, what did your mother get involved in?
My mom started doing real estate. They did a little bit of everything. My mom was a seamstress. There for a little bit, they were reupholstering furniture and things like that. But she ended up getting in real estate and was doing real successful. And then my dad got transferred to a position where you were like the first guy. He was the first guy you met. He was the personnel man. He did paperwork in the Navy his whole time. He was the first guy you saw when you got transferred to San Diego. And my dad's not the guy you see on TV back then. He was this big, buff guy. At least he looked like a giant to a 6-year-old. And basically, he would tell these young guys in the Navy when they came and saw him, well, here, you check in, you got to go here, this, that, and the other. Oh, yeah, by the way, we bought a house yet. And then, my dad, he's like this big, imposing guy. He goes, we'll go see my wife. It's only $1. It's $1 down with your benefits. I want to make sure you buy a house. You're going to buy a house, right, son? My mom was selling 30 houses a month.
Chapter 1 of your book, I believe, was titled "The Storm in My Head."
Yeah.
What life-changing event?
Yeah. Well, I was laying in bed when I was like 8 years old, and I was sitting up, and literally the room turned upside down. I mean, literally everything I was seeing turned upside down, and it really scared the hell out of me. And then that's the last I remember, and I woke up. I couldn't walk. I was spitting blood all out of my mouth. It was my first grand mal seizure with epilepsy. I chewed my tongue up and my lips up so bad there was just blood everywhere, and I tore the muscles in my legs and my back so much I couldn't walk. And I was able to crawl to my parents' bedroom, which was downstairs, and that was like the major life-changing moment of my life. I started having epileptic seizures. Hey, dude, what's up? Welcome. And then it was that's what sort of shaped my whole life, because when I was the whole real my dad ended up getting transferred away from that very lucrative job in the Navy, and my dad also ended up doing another tour in Nam, and so we're a lower middle income family. The television is downstairs in the living room. It's definitely not in my bedroom. And remember, this was the early 70s. There just wasn't a lot for a kid to watch anyway. Yeah. So, my mom gave me a book at the library. It was John D. Fitzgerald, The Great Brain. It was taking place in the 1890s in Utah. about an 8-year-old boy who declared that he had a great brain and had all these schemes for making money. So that's how my life turned out, and that's how I got my love of books. And it was, I got on medication, and everything. It was like once a month, every 6 weeks, I'd have a seizure, and I would be in bed for a week again. So that's sort of how my childhood went. I was pretty much a very bad kid because it was the 1970s. There was no internet. We had the fucking Wagnalls encyclopedia set that my mom bought one copy a week at the grocery store. If you looked at epilepsy, there was one little paragraph. Okay, it said a brain disorder.
Wow.
And then, I was a very bad kid because, from what I understood, I was a good possibility I wasn't going to live very long, so I figured I was going to do everything while I could. And I was doing all kinds of crazy stuff by the time I was 14, 15.
But something really positive came out of that, and that was you developed this voracious.
Oh yeah, so I said, when I was laying in bed, there's nothing else to do. I decided to read, and I never really, I like fiction a little bit, but I just fell in love with history books and science books, and I'm at 12 years old, and the librarians are looking at me and going, "Do you have any other physics books?" Okay, and that's how much of a nerd I am. You're looking at the guy who, this was just a couple years ago, I read the history of batteries twice. It was a page turner, it really was. And that's sort of, but my dad was a really neat guy. I mean, my dad was a really gruff, he was a drill instructor for a while too in the Navy. And, from the time I was like 8 years old, I mean, you'd hear things like, "What the fuck is your malfunction?" And, I would kick your ass like a seaman second. And then my mom screaming, "They're not in the Navy." When I was a kid, when you did the dishes, it was, "Dad, I'm done with the dishes, I'm ready for inspection." And then suddenly he had grandkids and turned into like this just mushy guy. But when I was 12 years old, he said I was old enough to work construction. So I started working construction every weekend. My friends got to watch Saturday morning cartoons. And, he taught me a really good work ethic. He's been my best friend ever since I've been a kid.
You averaged a seizure every 6 weeks.
Right around that, yeah.
You got involved in barbiturates, and I believe some grass.
Oh yeah, I was doing
at this point.
Oh, I was like 13, 14 years old. Remember, I was a kid, and I just basically told, I'd go see Navy doctors and things like this, and they would just tell me, "Well, there's a good chance." This is why we don't want government health care. I'm a product of it. I went to Navy doctors my whole life. I had doctors, "Well, you can die in any minute." I'm going like, "Well, I want to play," I'm trying to convince the doctor I want to play Little League. "Well, no, if you don't ball hit you in the head, you can just die in a minute." When I was a teenager, I decided I was going to party like a rock star because I figured I'd be dead soon. Fortunately, it didn't happen, and unfortunately, I didn't kill myself. I had some crazy experiences when I was a kid.
You lost interest in school, but yet you got A's in a lot of classes.
Well, when I was 14 years old, I got in some trouble and went to a pro school, and they gave me an IQ test and they told me I was a genius and everything like that. Worst thing you can ever do to a kid, especially a really cocky kid, is to make him more cocky like that. But my big problem with school was I would go to I was in advanced math, and after like 3 weeks I'd already read the textbook, and I would just sit around like this in class and doze off, and I figured, why do the homework? I just get an A at the end of the week and get a C on the test. And it was like ultra boring. Then when I was 16, I had a few seizures right in a row, and then when I was I kept having these bursts of little seizures, and I kept on getting in the hospital. And this was back in Clark County. I don't know if it's that way today, but back then I think it was 15 absences in a semester. You automatically failed. There was no exception whatsoever. So it got to the point where I wasn't going to graduate. But at this point, I really wasn't too upset about it because At 17 years old, I was the first person in Vegas with big Gucci bags. I mean, I was 17 years old making $1,000 a weekend selling big Gucci bags. And then when that fell apart, I went to Jordache jeans.
I'm going to go back a second. I mentioned that at age 14, your dad was driving a school bus. When you were 14, you went down a different road. Do you mind telling us
Well,
about
I'm like stealing a motorhome.
your dad's, right?
Yeah, my dad's. I was a crazy kid. I mean, it was in my head that I wasn't going to last long. So, I mean, like I said, I stole his motorhome. Me and my buddies were going to drive to Vegas. That's when I lived in San Diego. Didn't quite work out. We sort of screwed the motorhome up real quick. But you know, it was. I was doing a lot of drugs and a lot of crazy stuff like that. Fortunately, I came out of it. You know, nowadays it's a lot nicer. I mean, I'm actually on the board of directors of the Epilepsy Foundation. I try and raise a lot of money for them. It's just, I was a kid with no information. I thought I was going to die soon. And I was going to live my life to the fullest.
One of your early life lessons came in
The greatest life lesson I ever had, we talked about this earlier, was when I was 16 years old. I went to my dad and I said, F you. He knocked me out. And then when I got up off the ground, he just looked at him. He didn't ground me. He didn't yell at me. He didn't do anything. He just looked at me and says, "Old enough to talk to me like a man, old enough to get your ass beat like one," and walked away. And it literally was it literally changed my whole outlook on life.
Well, there's another life lesson, I believe, that happened in a car dealership showroom.
Oh yeah, I was probably like 10 years old, and my dad is buying a new car, and I'm with him, and he just starts screaming. You know, I'm 10 years old. I mean, I'm like this guy's age right here, and I'm not used to my dad's. I'm used to my dad screaming at me, not other people. And you know, and then the salesman walks away, and I'm just like, what did this guy do to my dad or whatever like that? And my dad just looks down at me and smiles and winks. Says, "It's all right, son." I think he got the car for the price he wanted.
I've always said that I hope to live long enough to see a time machine happen, and you could type in your name and type in somebody that you just met, a good friend, or people in your life, and have it spin back and show a video of when you cross paths with Rick. I lived on Mission Beach. Would I have bumped into you down on Mission Beach at any point?
Yeah, this is because when we'd go down there quite often when I didn't go to school, and I would sell stuff on the beach.
Sure. How about
We're talking the 70s.
I was working for the Associated Press and covered a lot of games at Jack Murphy Stadium. You were out there on occasion, I'm guessing.
Oh yes, well, the house I grew up with. You ever been to San Diego Stadium? There's a big hill right in front of it. We lived right at the top of that hill. That's where my neighborhood was at. Every kid in my neighborhood, it was. We found out that you didn't have to buy tickets to Chargers games and Padres games because we had our own secret entrance. At the very back of the stadium, there was this lone ticket booth that they never used. So right before a game, you'd see like 20, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids just hanging out, and someone would go. And it was 1 foot where you put the money in the little hole where you talk through in the window. That was another foot. The top of the window, the sign, and then you were on the roof. And we had this down to such a science, within 1 minute there was 20 kids on the roof all laying flat. And then one kid would just slide his head over like this and go, clear. Then we'd all hang, drop, and then run up the stairs to the top bleachers and watch baseball games. And heckle the entire time. Yeah, because after that we'd come back down and sit and just out in left field or something like that. And this was when the Chargers in the 70s, we were lucky to get 3,000 people. So we'd sit there, the front row on the outfield out there, and just the opposing team, we would just talk about the players' mothers.
I'm guessing you met some famous people
One of the, like, you know, I grew up in San Diego, and if anyone in the football, you know, is my age, knows about Dan Fouts. He was like one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. He was in San Diego. I had my first celebrity meeting ever, and me and my friend had a paper route, and you know, Sunday morning papers. Well, when the Sunday morning paper went to a whopping 50 cents from a quarter, which was just an amazing amount of money, we came up. We had another idea to make money. So we'd go to the 7-Eleven after we delivered all of our papers, and we'd put our bikes down, and we'd have our bags there from the San Diego Union Tribune, and we'd put 50 cents in the paper machine to pull all the papers out and put them next to our bicycles. And when people would come by to get a paper, we said, well, yeah, we noticed the paper machine was out, and we had extras this morning.
College came along and you sold some papers to him.
I sold his paper, and every time he had signed something for us, and he was always, it was like a huge deal to a 14-year-old boy. It's like
Sure.
a mega football fan.
I'm sure. So you were a high school dropout at 10th grade.
Yeah, I never even finished 10th grade.
And you wanted a car, of course, but there were some difficulties of getting a driver's license, right?
Well, the epilepsy was still going on. It was mellowing out a lot. You know, it was getting worse and better and worse and worse. But one of the problems was I was going blind. I would just be standing and, you know, you'd be standing somewhere, and then everything would fade out, and I would just immediately try and grab onto something. And then like 30 seconds, a minute later, my sight would come back. But being the child I was never going to tell my parents. I wanted a driver's license. Yeah, and then we moved to Vegas when I was 16. Me and my parents moved us to the land of milk and honey. And my first car was a 1973 Volkswagen Thing. The second day I had it, me and my buddies were driving down 15 at like 2 o'clock, 15 at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the roof flew off. So the next year I drove around a car with no roof. We're talking January, February, in the rain, everything. It was wheels though. It was glorious.
What was the reason that your dad decided to move here?
Well, when he retired from the Navy, he was in the real estate business with my mom, and then it was 1981. Interest rates are 21%. No one's selling houses. Yeah, and my dad also, the construction I talked about earlier. You know, he'd always buy condemned apartment complexes and revamp them and sell them. He had a lot of those, and he had mortgages on them. We couldn't sell them, and so one day I come home. He says, "We're moving to land of milk and honey." And a week later, we were in a car had everything packed up here. We were dodging repo people for the next year and everything else. It was an adventure, though. I mean, when I moved here, I thought I moved to hell. It's like, oh, I grew up in San Diego, it's paradise. You know, it's a hot day when it's 85 in the summer. You know, it's like 110 here in the summer. It's hard to get used to. It's losing shock to the system. It's losing shock to the system.
What was the first thing that he opened, your dad?
My dad owns a teeny little coin shop at 1501 Las Vegas Boulevard South. Yeah, if you don't know that location, it's right next to Olympic Gardens. Olympic Gardens, but back then Olympic Gardens was, it wasn't a Denny's, it was something like that. Anyway, we opened up there, and there was a Bob's Big Boy right next to us. He opened up a little 300 square foot coin shop, and then a few years later, he got a place on he got a jewelry store on Fremont Street, and then in '88, got a store on Las Vegas Boulevard. We sort of went together, and then I was able to figure out a way to get the first pawn license in 33 years in Vegas.
After considerable challenging issues with...
Okay, so I'm just a naive kid, and I always wanted a pawn license, so I think this was like 87, I'm 22 years old. I go around the city, I'm going like, why can't I get a pawn license? I want a pawn license. So the lady hands me the city code, and it was written in 1955, and 25,000 people lived in Las Vegas. And basically what it said, the good old boys had gotten together and passed a law that said when the city population got to 250,000, they'd issue one pawn license. Well, with 25,000 people living in Vegas, they obviously never thought it was never going to happen. So I asked, well, isn't it close to that? They're going, yeah, and they sort of blew me off. So I started calling the city statistician once a week. And in April of '88, he says, yeah, we think it's $250,000 now. So also being a naive 23-year-old, I go down to the city and say, I want my pawn license. Well, they didn't give it to me, but I took it to court. The judge said, well, he was the first one there, give it to him. And even and in the 80s, even back then, pawn licenses were going between $500,000 and $1 million. So I got my first pawn license, we got the pawn license, and slowly but surely we built up the business.
I'm guessing that the gold and silver pawn is probably, that you've probably received some sort of offers for?
I have had a lot of people wanting me to sell it and stuff like that. I mean, it's like this, but what the hell would I do? I get bored easy, so I like my job, it's fun.
What do you think it would, if you could get $500,000 for it with a license alone before, what do you think it's worth now?
Oh, no, I mean, my pawn shop does, I average 4,000 people a day. We do $30 million a year in sales.
Wow. 30 million in sales.
It's, it's worth a lot more than that nowadays. I have 60 some, it's not like you see on a TV show, I have 60 some people that work there.
Started with 10, I believe, right?
Well, no, I started with just like 6, but then before the show we had like 10 employees. And then once I got the show, it just sort of blew up.
Well, tell us how that evolved, how that came about. How did you decide to make a pitch? Had you been doing a lot of TV?
Well, so for lack of a better term, I've always been a media whore. Well, no, I mean, because every time I got a television, or I got a nationwide magazine article or TV, or something like that, it was always good for business. And I mean, that's why I put world famous pawn shop on this world famous gold silver pawn shop inside the building.
What did your dad think of that?
He thought it was stupid, you know. And I remember my son asking me once, "Well, why is it world famous?" Because it gets me on TV. And he goes, "Why do you get on TV?" I go, "Because I got to work because it's world famous." So, but I got a lot of national press. PBS did a documentary on me, you know, I think it was 01 or 02. I got I was on Insomniac, Dave Attell. ABC did a few nationwide things on me. I mean, I was always a lot of foreign press was going on like that. And then I heard about this dog bounty hunter guy. And I'm going like, if I can get a reality show, I mean, if I get a season or two, it'd be great for business. So I started pitching the show, and I pitched it for 4 years. I went through like 17 different producers and all these other things, and everyone just kept on telling me, no one wants to see a show about 4 fat guys in a pawn shop. And then I hooked up with Left Field Pictures, and it was just a really bizarro whirlwind because and they called me up, and this was in like late November. And I've been pitching the show for 4 years. So
Late November, what year?
of '87. I mean, no, excuse me, 07. And I've been pitching this for 4 years. So when a production company calls me up, I knew all the lies to tell at this point. Because in television, no one wants you unless someone else wants you. It's the most bizarro, screwed up business you've ever seen. And then, so I started dropping, NBC. I'm talking about NBC Universal wants to do a pilot, and all these other things I'm talking about. And because when I was talking to them, this was late November, they're saying they're going to come out in February. So I started dropping all this stuff, and they said, well, can we come out there next week and film a sizzle reel? I'm sure a lot of you people have heard, you've talked for friends or family, they talk about, they've got a pilot for a show. They don't have a pilot, it's called a sizzle. That's a really cheap thing. A sizzle is like a sales tape. A pilot is a couple $100,000 produced, it's a lot more. So they came out, they did a sizzle. They did, and the funny thing is they were going to do it on a Friday and a Saturday. And my dad was telling me he didn't want to come in on a Saturday because he goes, why do I got to come in on Saturday? He goes, Dad, we're going to get a TV show. It's like, you're never going to get an effing TV show. I literally had to beg him to come in on that Saturday for that last. And Left Field Pictures, they got in front of History Channel. And this is where the real weird, bizarre kismet of the world happened. Because there's like, you wouldn't believe the layers of BS you have to go through to get a show on television. So they just go, they're showing it to the first peon at the network. And they put the DVD in his DVD player A&E Networks in New York, and his DVD player breaks. So they take the DVD out and they start walking down the hallways and asking if there's anybody who's got a DVD player that works. So the vice president of A&E Networks goes, yeah, you can use mine. So they go down there and he's at his desk at the other end of the office because he's got this gigantic office. I've been to it since. And they're at the other end, they're watching the thing, and he walks over and goes, well, I like that, order a pilot. And usually, like, there was no layers of BS. It was like, so they came out in February, they filmed the pilot. They showed it to History Channel in April on a Friday. On Tuesday, they called me up and told me we had a series. There was an intern that worked for Left Field Pictures. They came up with the name Pawn Stars. By the way, he was fired 3 days later. So then History Channel had we were supposed to go on in October, but they had some programming that turned out really bad, and they put us on in July, and we had the highest premiere ratings of any show in the history of just the History Channel. And my son Corey and Chumley will say it's because they're just so amazing on television. I say it's because people were going through their cable guides that thought it said something besides Pawn Stars. And it was pretty, we threw this giant party for it. And I threw a party, and 5 minutes into the party, my son walks outside and goes, Dad, you all right? And I'm going, this is the worst show I've ever seen in my life. And to this day, I've seen like 2 episodes of Pawn Stars. I cannot watch myself on television. And it just sort of kind of cruising along, and business started picking up a little bit. I took 2 weeks off at Christmas, and I came back. And I come back, it's like on the 2nd of January 2010. And their fire marshal is there. And there's this giant crowd in the store. There's people lined up down the street, and he's telling us we're over capacity. And it was like literally just, business was good. It was helping a little bit, but then like I got back on January 2nd, and from that day we've had lines.
Well, let's go back to your personal life for a minute. You got married young.
I got a girlfriend when I was 17 years old, and that's how we got Corey. Then we had another kid right afterwards. It ended up like all marriages like that. And she was, so I had a couple years later, I had a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old that I was raising by myself. We split. And then I met Tracy, and that was my second wife. And we were together 20 years. And it just, quite frankly, didn't work out because of various things. And then 5 years ago, I met the love of my life, Deanna. I met her at Bittner's Grill. She was a legal secretary. It's a lot of lawyers and stuff over there. And I was, I'm trying to get my back on. I'm trying to get my game on. I'm talking to her. They have a patio there. And Corey is yelling from the other side of the patio, hey, HIV Rick, what's going on, dude? I'm saying, Rick, dude, you're getting all your color back. And then, I started talking to her, and it was like the most refreshing woman I ever talked to. She looks at me, she goes, I'm a single mom raising 3 kids. I don't get any child support. I don't take any welfare. I work a damn lot. I have an ex-husband that's a really bad person that did some bad things to my kid. You still want to go out with me? I'm going, yeah, because you told me everything. And so we ended up, we got married 2.5 years later. I told her, where do you want to go on the honeymoon? I'll take you to south of France. I'll take you to Fiji. I got all the money in the world. She goes, no, let's go camping. So we went camping for 3 weeks. Okay, our first date was the greatest. I took her to Ariel inside Mandalay Bay. And, we're walking out. And my wife has no filter, even back on our first date. And she sees the signs, the Steel Panther was playing. I go, I love Steel Panther. She goes, BS, you just want to get in my pants. I go, no, I pulled out my phone. I showed her I actually had some Steel Panther music on it. So if people don't know what the band Steel Panther, they are dirty. They wouldn't allow this guy in. Like, they were the only black will look like a mile of the theater. And But they also cover some songs. So, we ended up going to Steel Panther, and then they saw me in the audience. And on our first date, I'm on stage singing Sweet Child of Mine. So we had Steel Panther be our wedding band. Like I literally am the happiest guy in the world. My wife's, she's got 3 daughters that all call me dad, and my wife is the most down-to-earth person ever. I do really, really well. And on Valentine's Day, she says, "Don't buy me jewelry, don't buy me a purse, buy me these hiking boots."
That's a keeper. Yeah, it's a keeper. So tell us, when did Chum enter the picture, and what were the circumstances?
Chum, when Corey and Chum were like 11 years old, they got in a fight in the park over something 11-year-olds get in a fight over, you know what I mean? And because of that fight, they became best friends. That's what young boys do. And then when Chum was like 13 years old, we were at Thanksgiving, and Corey walks in and says, "Dad, can Chum eat with us? He ain't got a place to go." His dad had some issues that he eventually got taken care of, and he ended up being a great dad to Chum a few years later. But he didn't have a place to go. He had no place to eat Thanksgiving, so he ate Thanksgiving with us, and then the next thing you know, a month later, there's a stocking hanging over the fireplace that says Chum Lee on it. And he's, off and on his whole life, he's given me Father's Day presents and everything else like that, and I consider him one of my kids.
I think so.
Yeah.
I know. I interviewed Tom about 2 years ago, and he told a story about that his father died of pancreatic cancer at age 54, 2 weeks before the show started.
Yeah, just right before the show, 2 weeks before the show aired.
And I'm guessing that there is probably that having a lot to do, even taking the bond even stronger, I'm guessing.
He's like I said, I love him. I consider him one of my kids. He's from the day he started making a lot of money, he came to me and I helped him out with it. He's literally set up for life. It's like $25,000 to DJ now. Apparently he's pretty good at it. I don't get it. You know what I mean? Like when I go out, I want to see a band, not a guy going, whoa, whoa. I mean, those guys on the strip that get paid like $200,000 a night go, whoa. And then press a button on the computer, go.
So when there's a little ritual when Chum's birthday comes up, he says,
Every year, Chum says, so Rick, what'd you get me for my birthday? I go, same thing as last year, Chum. He goes, fame and fortune. I go, yep.
The next question is going to be how you pitched it, but I've always thought that part of the success of it is the fascinating stories behind it and the characters. And you mentioned something to me the other day that the producers tried to edge you closer to getting more drama.
Oh yeah, that was from day one. I was not gonna be the Jersey Shore. If you have a television show that's a train wreck, eventually the train's gonna wreck. And I refuse to do that from day one. My young kids weren't gonna be on.